All right, hey everybody, it's Mr. Richards here, and I'm going to go over the first assignment for quarter 3. It's called Introduction to Programming. I thought I'd give an overview of it because I'm seeing some responses that are really great, and for those of you who did not come to the class, it was a struggle. So I wanted to give everybody an opportunity to do a great job on this, so I'm just kind of recording what I taught during class so you can do a great job. Okay. So when you're actually writing code for a robot, you're writing in a different language, and it's not like, well, it's sort of like languages like English, Hmong, Korean, Spanish, but I don't think it's nearly as challenging to learn. I think it's way easier. We'll be using a programming language called C++, if you care to know about it, but we call it in general when we're using it for robots. In this class, we call it Robot C. All right, so let's actually get started. Now, when we're writing programming language for a robot, the first thing we want to do is we want to start with our desired behavior. And the desired behavior is just what you want your robot to do. Okay, so it's kind of like you're thinking about the end result that you want to have happen. And you sort of work backwards from there. So you take your desired behavior, then you split it into steps that are easy and pretty obvious to separate, right? Like when you're cooking some food, you don't do everything at once unless the recipe tells you. There's usually a couple of steps that you have to go through: first, second, third, last, etc. And that's the same way with programming. And after you get your steps figured out, then you actually put in your code and try it out. So I'll walk you through that right now. So I have written the desired behavior right here. We're talking about a car, 4 wheels and a motor. It can drive forward and reverse, but it can't turn. And here's the desired behavior: to move forward for 10 seconds, stop for 5 seconds, and then reverse to the original position. So I'm going to take this right here, and I'm going to copy. Well, I have everything right here. So I'm just going to kind of start because I've taught this a bunch of times. But I'm going to just paste that desired, what we want it to do right here. Okay. So here we have our desired behavior. And what we want to do is split it into steps. Now, when I write these out for you to do, I try to make it obvious. So I'm separating the steps by connecting procedural words. And those are words like then, next, first, last, first, second, third, that kind of thing. So we can do that right here. Every time we find a then, I'm going to make it a new line. And there we go. There's our 3 steps. And I can take the thens out because we don't need them anymore. Whoops. And I can take that one out. Okay. And we can take this gold portion out, and there we have it. Here are our 3 steps, our desired behavior in 3 steps. Now, what we're going to do next is we're going to do something really special, and this is called commenting. And so what I'm doing at the beginning of each line is I'm putting 2 forward slashes. And on your keyboard, the forward slash is on the bottom right hand side right next to shift. I'm pretty sure that's where it is for your iPads. And what comments do is when you're writing in the programming space on a computer, the comments make it so that the computer ignores whatever is on this line. And we want that because what's on these comment lines is for humans, not for computers. They help us organize the way we're writing code, but we want the human to ignore it because this is not coding language. This is just English, okay? And you could write your comments in any language you want, whatever language makes sense for you. I'm writing them in English because that's the only language I know how to write in. All right, so those are our 3. This is our desired behavior, and this is the 3 steps we're going to do. So we want to move forward for 10 seconds. Then our next step is to stop for 5 seconds. And our last step is to reverse to the original position. Okay, cool. Now, notice we haven't even started writing any code yet. And this is sorry, I'm yawning a lot today. This is probably the most challenging part of programming. And I know that seems weird to you, but a lot of people, it's challenging because a lot of people want to skip this step. And it makes their code super disorganized. It's really difficult to read. It's almost impossible to debug because you don't know what you're actually trying to make it do in the first place. And as soon as you are away from it for more than 10 minutes, you forget what your code is all about. So having these comments in here is a reminder for the humans who are writing the code and reading the code and working on the code over several days. All right, so that's that. Now we got our blocks, or our sort of our what are we? Yeah, blocks. These are pieces of code. All right, and I've like sort of simplified these because when we're actually writing code, they'd be a little bit more complicated. But this is kind of like a general overview, so this will get you the basic idea. Now, working with a motor and programming is like turning on and off a light switch. And what I mean by that is if I said, okay, I want the light in this room to be on for 5 minutes and then turn it off, and you have to make that happen, well, the way you would do it is you'd walk out over to the light switch, you'd flip it on, you'd set a timer on your phone for 5 minutes, and once that 5 minutes is up, you turn it off, right? So that's kind of the same thing that we have to do here. We have to start a motor, and then we have to wait a certain amount of time for that motor to do whatever you want it to do, and then we have to stop the motor, okay? And that's basically the first step. In this case, we want to start the motor in the forward direction. We want to wait for 10 seconds, then we want to stop. So I'm just going to put those commands in here because we have start motor forward. And I'm copying and pasting because with the computer, you get to be lazy about this stuff. You don't have to retype everything unless you don't want to. And we're going to move forward for 10 seconds, so we're going to pick the wait for 10. And then the stop motor is the last command. Now, this is something that students will often forget. They will forget to put in the stop motor command. And my suggestion is every time you start a motor in that step, so this is step 1, within that step, please also stop that motor. And the reason we do that is it keeps our code really organized, and it prevents things from happening like you have a motor that continues to run and you don't know why, which happens all the time. Especially when we're first getting started. Okay, so let's go on to the next one. Stop for 5 seconds. Well, this is really easy. We don't have to stop the motor because we already stopped it up here. So in this case, we've already got the motor to move for 10 seconds. If you can see my mouse, it go across and then stop. And now all we want to do is we want it to stay stopped for 5 seconds, which is really easy. We don't have to start or stop a motor. We just put in the wait command right there. All right, and now I'm going to show you another dirty trick. Notice the reverse to the original position. Well, if we've got the car moving forward from left to right in this case for 10 seconds and it stops for 5 seconds and we want to get it back to the starting point going in reverse, then all we have to do is make it move in reverse for the same amount of time that it moved forward in, which was 10 seconds. Which means we're doing pretty much these 3 steps again. The only difference is instead of saying start motor in forward, we do start motor in reverse. Well, check this out. I'm going to copy and paste those 3 steps. Make sure we're all on the same page. Okay, I'm going to change that forward to reverse. And that's it. That's all of the code you need to do this. Now, a couple of things that I want you to have learned, and I'll kind of review this. Number 1, you always start with your desired behavior. Remember, up here, this sentence is the desired behavior. You can copy and paste this sentence right into your programming space. Divide it into steps. Remember, we separated those steps with the words then. So step 1, step 2, and step 3. All right, separated by the words then. Make those comments. All right, so now we have our desired behavior split into steps. The last thing we do is we put our code in there, or the code that we think is going to make that desired behavior happen. All right, now again, think about how simple this behavior is. Move forward for 10 seconds, stop for 5 seconds, then move backward for 10 seconds, and look at how much code it takes to make that happen. Okay, now some of you might think, oh, that's not that much, and some of you might be like, wow, that's way more than I thought. And in general, when you're writing code, at least when you're starting, when we aren't including any functions or objects or things like that, it is a lot of code to make some really simple things happen. And this is the reason why it's so important for us to keep things organized, because what the computer sees right here, the computer does not see the comments. The computer only sees this. All right? Now, this code looks shorter, But if you were to leave for a day or a week, you know, we have robotics every other day, you might forget about something, whatever. And you come back to it and you might look at this and be like, wait, what the heck was I trying to do again? Where is the part that only goes forward? Oh, okay, I guess it's this whole section here, okay? Instead of wasting time doing that, if you have your comments here already set up, and you already have your white spaces, meaning that you've put in some space, just hit the return key to make it clear that, you know, we have chunks that are separated from each other by white space. It's going to make it way faster for you to pick things up and continue working on them later. It's going to be much easier for groups to understand what individuals in their group are trying to do. Let's say if you're trading off with the program that you're doing. So this is something that I'm going to ask you to do. Now, on the assignment for today, or the assignment for robotics for the first week, you need to basically copy this post into the discussion post. You need to copy this information in the discussion post. And I know, like, it seems like, well, that's not doing that much. And it's like, yeah, I know that. Next week, I'm going to give you another set of desired behaviors with some more pieces of code, and code that's a little bit more complicated because we're taking baby steps to getting to the point where you understand the real code that we use. And it'll get tougher. But right now, I just want you to get in the habit of, like, this is what our code should look like. We should have comments. We should have our code sections separated by white spaces, all right? And that's what we want to have happen. All right, of course, if you have any questions for me, you can stop by my office hours. Probably the best, though, is to come to class and ask them at the end of class. We always end 5 to 10 minutes early, and we have plenty of time at the end of class for me to answer questions and walk you through these assignments if you need to. Otherwise, you can send me an email and set up a time to meet with me to go through this stuff literally any time of the day. I will meet with you and help you through this, okay? All right, well, take care, everybody. Hopefully this was useful for you.